The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, Kilda, power. I love the power. I love the power.
G'day everyone, Macca 19 here, and this is the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, coming to you live once again on Port Fan Radio. Look, Rick's unavailable tonight. He's still probably celebrating with the boys after the game. So we've got two guests on tonight. The first is El Scorcho. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Pretty good.
Thanks for having me on again. Happy to be here, replacing Rick, sort of. Hopefully I get to toss the coin at the next home game. As per
That's it. Yeah. Hopefully there's no faults like last week.
No, that's right. That was pretty bad. We had a lot of really top quality discussion that no one will ever hear.
Best podcast ever, and no one's ever going to hear it. What a shame.
That's right.
Such a threat. Yeah.
That's it. And the second guest is Raman.
G'day, fellas. How you going?
Good. Before we start, Raman, you won tickets for the locker room on the weekend. Do you want to give us your thoughts on the locker room experience?
Oh yeah, look, it's anyone who's kind of read about it probably knows what they're in for, but it's really cool just to get that view. You get in there. I think it was open about an hour and 20 minutes before the game started. So you just see some of the boys wandering around in the warm up area, all kind of casual, usually with the headphones on, just basically piss farting around and having a nice relaxing time. And it's really fun to watch how the seriousness of the room just slowly escalates as you go on. And by the time it's 10 minutes before game time, everybody's crashing into each other. And poor old Sam Gray was wrestling Ollie Wines, which I thought pretty unfair. I don't know why they couldn't have matched him up with Jake Need, but yeah. But good luck to him. And it's once you get over the inherent creepiness of the whole experience of watching everybody through the one-way glass, it's a hell of a thing. I'd recommend it to everybody.
So it's literally Sammy Gray's fault that Ollie Wines did his shoulder.
Yeah, well, why not? Yeah, we claim it up on Sammy Gray, so why not add that to it?
That's it. Well, look, let's get on to our love and hate, which is one thing we loved, one thing we hated about Port Adelaide this week. Scorcho, mate, might start with you.
I'll start with the love because I have that prepared.
Yep.
This probably is going to cover a little bit too much, but I'm just going to say in general how well all the fringe players played. So if we look at guys like Young, Moore, even O'Shea, Calhoun, Need, all those guys, even Sam Gray had a fantastic game. So all these guys who usually we just see the rotating in and out, and we complain a lot of weeks about how there's not a lot of core changes apart from maybe the dropping of Broadbent and Jonas. These guys just rotate around, but they all had games where it's going to be really difficult to see any of them be dropped, and that's what you really like to see. I guess I'll highlight Need. He just seems to, in the last couple of weeks, have learnt a bit about about being that crumbing forward that we really want to see from him. And he always puts a lot of pressure on, but he just seems to be able to find some space in the forward 50, which is fantastic. Bagging himself 2 goals. So obviously there hasn't been a great defensive effort from the last 2 teams we've played, but if he can start to find that space against good teams, he becomes a very dangerous player for us. So that'd be my love.
Absolutely, good call. And your hate?
My hate. All right. I'm gonna go with probably similar to the one we had last. I said last week, and I'm not sure if it got through before we cut out. But just basically that the season's over and there wasn't a lot of sting in that game, and I wish I could have enjoyed that game more than I did. And I think there was a lot of talk about the negativity on the forums, and I think most of that stems from the fact that we couldn't have done that against Carlton or Brisbane, because that was probably the most enjoyable game on the face of it to go to all year. We just played them off the park. Great pressure. Skills were pretty good. We had leading forwards, marking, kicking goals. We had, a goal of the year from Westhoff. And it's just all kind of behind that is the frustration that we're now effectively out of the finals race. And, it's just a shame it took us this long to get into this kind of form.
Yeah. Good call. Raman?
For the love, I think the thing that stands out for me the most from this game is probably Hamish Hartlett's game.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just. I mean, he's had better games for us. He didn't he didn't impact the scoreboard much, but he just shows glimpses. I know he played at halfback, but he just is showing glimpses of being that Rolls Royce midfielder that we always hoped he could be. And for some reason, it's just it was incredibly heartening with him and O'Shea just having games which just show you just how good they can be. And Hammer in particular just blew me away with that game. He's been good for a few weeks, don't get me wrong, but it was more in more the numbers added up more this week, I think. And look, if we can start to see some kind of consistency coming into his game next year, because like Scorcho, I've pretty much written this year off already as well. But it just shows what an enormous asset he can be, particularly given relative to how maligned he is among much of the fan base.
Absolutely, yeah. No, his outside game was brilliant. He just found a lot of the ball on the outside, and he did some good things inside as well. But I think even in the crowd, people were noticing how well he was playing. I heard some comments around where I sit where people were talking about how impressed they'd been by him. So great call.
Yeah. It's normally the other way around. He's normally
that's right.
the first guy to cop it, apart from Jasper. As far as a hate goes, this is kind of selfish, but I hate the hangover that I've got at the moment, thanks to literally like 2 days in a row of free beer from the Port Adelaide Football Club at Albion on Saturday for the Club 1870 event, and yesterday in the locker room. And as I mentioned to Macca before the show, I actually lucked my way into a corporate box for the second from the second quarter onwards. In addition to that, so it wasn't pretty, and things kind of continued on after the game, and here I am today, and I've only just started to feel vaguely human again in the last couple of hours.
Crazy, love it. And look, my love is a 4-quarter effort. Fantastic. For the first time this year, we played well for 4 quarters. We won all 4 quarters and didn't really give the opposition a sniff at getting back into it, apart from maybe a 10-minute period in the second quarter when we just couldn't seem to get it out of the back line. But outside of that, we dominated pretty much from go to woe. And as we've already said, guys like Hammer, Brody, O'Shea, Moore, Young, Sam Gray, all the players that have been criticised for their consistency throughout the season, played their best 4-quarter games of the year as well. So that was really fantastic to see. And the hate, I've got to say, it's the negativity towards the win, especially on big footy. I mean, come on, guys, best win for the year, most consistent win for the year. I think at times like this, when the season's over, even though it's been a bitterly disappointing year given the expectations that we had, I think you just need to enjoy the little things when they come along. And, to win like that, even though it wasn't against a great opponent, it was just enjoyable to see us play that sort of footy again.
Yeah, and you say it you're right that it's not against a great opponent, and I can sort of understand the too little, too late attitude that a lot of people have. But I mean, what can you expect to see other than improvement at this stage of the season? And I mean, St Kilda aren't a great team, but they're a better team than Carlton, and they're a better team than Brisbane. So I mean, we won very comfortably by 10, 11 goals, and that. Again, they're not a great team, but they also didn't lay down and die. They were triers. They obviously they screwed themselves over in front of goal and stuff, but they were making an effort, and for most of the time they were putting a fair bit of pressure on us. So I don't know how you can be unhappy with that result.
Yeah,
you're almost damned if you do, damned if you don't at this stage of the year. I mean, if we won by 10 points, people would be going, "Oh, how crap's this? We can't even beat St Kilda by more than 10 points." If you lose, then it's just an absolute nightmare, and you win by heaps, and people just say, "Well, where was this 10 weeks ago?" So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
We spent, 5 years there just expecting to lose every week and expecting to get smashed, and all of a sudden we've had, a season and a half of good footy, and where our standards are a bit too high, I think. Hopefully they'll stay high based on the footy we play. But, I think that probably explains the negativity, and that's the only real reason you could be negative, really, about, as you say, our best 4-quarter performance of the year. Everyone playing well.
That's it. Before we move on to the review, I guess the the most important thing to talk about is Ollie Wine's injury. As we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, it looks like he popped his shoulder in the first quarter, came back on for about 5 minutes. I think he popped it out again, and the club sort of called it quits there and then. It looks possible, even probable, that he might miss the rest of the season. What do you think will come out of this in terms of sort of player structure, and do we bring back in Archie, or does someone like Moore or Young take that spot on full time?
I think you really hope that Archie comes back in. I think he should have been in anyway, over someone like a Gray, given his ceiling and what we've seen from him. But it gives someone a really good opportunity. Ollie, as young as he is still an integral part of our side. So someone like Archie, given that Moore and Young both played this week anyway, it gives someone like Archie, hopefully, whatever 6 or 7 games, however many games we've got left in the season, to really stamp their place. And I hope they leave him in and give him a good run. I don't care whether Ollie is good to come back in round 23, unless we are winning to make finals, wrap him in cotton wool and get them ready for next year. I think I don't think anything's coming of this year. So anyone at this stage gets an injury that might be a 3 or 4 weeker, just get them ready for the preseason, I think. So we don't need to be risking our Rolls Royce at this point of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty devastated to be missing Ollie for the rest of the year, but it's the best thing for it. And yeah, I completely agree. To me, bringing Archie back in is just a no-brainer. And hopefully leaving Aaron Young in as well, because we just have looked better when we've had those broad-shouldered types in the middle.
Yeah. To go with that, it looks like Logan Austin's been put on ice for the rest of the year as well with shoulder surgery. So he might have a partner with shoulder surgery pretty soon, I reckon.
Yeah, I've really liked Austin's year in the games I've seen so far. He just moves really well for a defender. Just a real kind of smooth mover. Reads the play pretty well. I think overall, we did pretty well in that draft, given the picks we had, and Austin was a big part of that. He's probably, I guess Palmer's probably been the most impressive in what I've seen, but Austin, just being that, he's got a good size about him, and you can see him slotting into our defence in the next few years quite well in the way that he moves the ball and the way he reads the play.
No doubt. Well, let's move on and talk about the review. And obviously, Port had one of its best wins for the year, winning against St Kilda by 63 points, 17 goals 10 to 6 goals 13. Chatty Wingard once again led the scoring with 4 goals, whilst Jakey Need, Matt White, Jay Schultz and Justin Westhoff kicked 2 goals each. As we said before, first 4-quarter game of the year, got to be happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We just smashed them off the park, and I think I read on the AFL website that the score flattered flattered us, and I think it flattered St Kilda. If anything, we should have beaten them by more. We were just in control of the game for 4 quarters. Even when they had that period of us struggling to get out of defence, I think that's just modern footy, and I think you find just about every team would struggle against every team at some point in the game. So I don't worry about that too much, as long as we make them pay on the way back. And it's just a really good 4-quarter effort. There was we won in the midfield, won in defence, won in attack. We won all over the ground for 4 quarters, and that's all you can really ask.
Yeah, I guess if you're being really stingy, you could call it a 3.5-quarter effort. We were that second. There were some bad signs going on in that second quarter that I thought, oh god, what the hell's going to happen here? But luckily we put that behind us pretty smartly, which was good to see.
Yeah, that call that it was flattering. I mean, that's just the opinion of someone that didn't even watch the game and just read the scoreline and saw that St Kilda kicked 6 goals 13 and gone, oh well, if they kick straight, it would have been pretty close. But I mean, the run of the game wasn't like that at all, and we missed just as many pretty simple shots, I reckon. And it seemed to me like most of St Kilda's misses all came from sort of like pings from 50 or from the boundary, and they weren't likely to go in. Whereas Justin Westhoff missed one from 10 metres out, dead in front. Paddy Ryder did the same. We missed some pretty easy shots as well.
I think if you look at, especially last year, we used to get criticised, and we used to criticise our team for kicking inaccurately, but we did a lot of the same. We lead to the pocket and we have snaps from the pocket or set shots from really tight angles, and then wonder why we're kicking straight and say, oh, if only we kicked straighter. But, you can make a team miss a lot by making them take tough shots, and that's what we did. Our pressure was brilliant. We controlled the middle of the ground, which meant they were taking shots from tight angles, and not always, but they didn't have a lot of really easy shots to get in. So in those misses, if you think maybe they could have kicked another 5, they're still 5 goals behind us, but they would have been kicking goals they probably weren't percentage kicks because of the pressure we were putting on. And I think the same thing kind of happened to us last year when we were kicking inaccurately. It wasn't that we were missing easy shots, we were missing tough shots, and teams were forcing us to miss tough shots. So I think that's pretty much the way it went.
That's it. No doubt. Well, look, I think it was a game for the unsung heroes, as we kind of talked about before. And I want to sort of mention them sort of one by one, and might as well start with Sammy Gray, who had probably his career best game, 20 touches, a goal, had 3 goal assists, something like 4 clearances as well. I think the best part for me was that he often started further up the field, either on a forward flank or on a wing. Even spent considerable time around the stoppages as well, which was pleasing. And it was great to see him, perform.
Absolutely. I think if he plays like that every week, we wouldn't be complaining about him being in. But that's probably the only other game he's played close to that was his debut, where we thumped Brisbane by 100 points, and he got on the end of some good play. I think this game he probably created a bit more himself than that game. I think that game he was just did well on the back of everyone else kind of getting him the ball, but this was a really positive game, and that's the sort of game that you want from your second tier players. And look, if he starts stringing games like that together when he gets his opportunities, it's going to be very hard for those of us who have been anti-picking him to make those sort of arguments, because that was a fantastic game, and you won't get any argument from anyone on that, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, I guess just to play devil's advocate here, we were saying similar things about Kane Mitchell earlier in the year, where we were saying like he finally looked like maybe a decent shot at a first choice player, but our opinions kind of turned around a little bit after that. So yeah, I'm still pretty unconvinced. I mean, I know it was certainly a better game than the Brisbane game, which if memory serves me, he was pretty much just tied to a forward pocket in that game, wasn't he? And just
pretty much,
pretty much.
Yeah.
So he put in a great effort, and you can't knock him for it. But I still don't see it as a future best 22 player, I suppose.
I mean, I think he's played 12 games now, and we're talking about 2 games where he's played well, and both games have been dominating victories. And one of them was just getting on the good work of others. So we're talking about one really influential game, and I mean, when I say influential, I mean by his standards, probably not compared to some of the other influential players on the ground, but one solid game out of 12. And I've been on the forums a lot lately complaining about how we're selecting players and wasted selections and things like that. And this is a good example of it, really. Look, he will get. I'm sure he will get more opportunity. And if he does, I hope he takes it again like this. But I would, if we dropped him for Butcher or Harvey next week, I certainly wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah. I get the feeling that maybe Kenny Hinkley's just sort of said to him, show me what you've got, prove to me that you're worth, either redrafting or getting a spot on the senior list for next year.
But why doesn't he say that to some other players?
Because they're already signed up. I'm guessing. I mean, that's the opinion that I've got. And it was interesting to hear Kenny Hinkley say after the game, I didn't think Sammy Gray could play like this. I've had my doubts as well, so it was good to see him play this well. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he says that, and despite having picked him 12 games, that he doesn't think he can play a good, solid game. Like, why is he picking him and not picking? I mean, I guess a lot of the argument, again, made on the forums this last couple of days has been about picking guys who are in good SNFL form that don't necessarily translate into good AFL players. And look, you can't argue with the selections of the likes of Gray and say Paul Stewart on the back of their SNFL form, because they've been really good. But we already know what that translates to at AFL level, and it doesn't. Why don't we try someone like an Archie who's played one full game this year in those kind of roles, because maybe they've got a higher ceiling. And I think a bit of it is what I was complaining about last week, is that we're still saying, there's still a chance of finals and we might scrape into 8th, so we've got to play our best team. And whether we're even playing our best team by doing that, I doubt. But I think it's a bit of a wasted development opportunity, selecting the way we're selecting.
The other side of that coin about the SNFL form thing is that we finally saw O'Shea come back and play a pretty decent game. Did he ever actually show any decent SANFL form? I don't think he did. I think he was just selected again on the basis of his previous AFL performances. So there is. It's a bit of a furphy because the SNFL is just so difficult to compare side by side with the AFL, and we all know that there are some players who will perform well in one and not the other, and vice versa. As weird a phenomenon as that is, O'Shea's a great example of one of those guys who just never looks at home in the sandful and yet can look $1 million in the AFL.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I still reckon they're sort of saying to Sammy, show us what you've got, because like him or loathe him, he's almost there. He dominates the SANFL.
Yeah.
He shows some glimpses at AFL level. If it sticks for him and he becomes a very good player, I mean, you give him that sort of opportunity, and maybe this is the landmark moment for him, and maybe next week he'll continue this sort of good form, or maybe he'll regress and forget how to kick again, and be that sort of player like he has been in the past. So I think it's just a case of them sort of saying, we've got to make a decision on Sammy Gray because we can't sort of give him another year on the rookie list. We've either got to redraft him as a rookie or we've got to add him to the senior list. So they've got to make a bit of a decision, and I think that's what they're trying to do at the moment. I guess the next player who's been criticised reasonably heavily this year as well has been Andrew Moore, who I thought had another great game, and he had 20 touches and a goal, and really sort of took on that sort of inside mid-roll once Ollie Wines went off the ground, and played a pretty bloody good game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't argue with the stat line. 20 touches at 80%. 5 marks, 5 clearances, so he was getting it inside and out. Kicked a really nice goal, and that's the sort of game we want to see from him. And he's got that big body that we like, and it's just about translating that SNFL forward where he kind of looks like he belongs at SNFL level. Oh, that's the wrong way of wording it. He looks like he knows that he's a good player at SNFL level, but he gets to AFL level and he's a bit timid. Today he wasn't. Maybe it was because we were playing quite a young St Kilda side, and he looked at them and sized them up and thought, I'm better than half these guys and I'll play like I am. So, we almost need to just insert the brain of, like a Josh Franco or something like that into him. A player that knows he's good, and then watch him flourish, because he's he's definitely got some ability. It's just about him believing, I think. But it's a really good game from him.
Yeah, I have to admit I've been pretty on the fence about Moore for a long time, and I flat out did not in a million years expect him to actually kick that goal. For some reason, like it was a set shot around 40-ish from memory. Yeah. I thought, just our Moore type players just have, players in that kind of class of will they, won't they, just have not been kicking those goals this year. So he kind of won me over by nailing that and just having a pretty solid game altogether. Like you said, he's just starting to look like he belongs.
Yeah.
Aaron Young's another who had a very good game, 21 touches. I think he had half a dozen clearances as well, and it was really good around the packs, and his sort of quick kicks forward I thought were pretty decent, and again he had a couple of goal assists and played pretty well. Yeah,
just got involved. That's the kind of game. I guess we used to say he was a super sub because he'd come on as a sub and look really good, but then when he'd play full games he didn't, I guess, look as good. This game was a game where he played well for the whole time he was on. I felt and looked like he belonged alongside the other midfielders there. So again, same as Moore. If he's going to start to believe and play that sort of footy, he's definitely got a place going forward in our side.
Yeah, there seem to be more people and young people when it comes to particularly the Port fans on big footy. The thing
it's almost like Twilight.
Yeah, exactly. Team Jacob, by the way. The thing that makes me slightly a young person is as you just said, he just looks a little bit more dangerous up forward when he manages to find himself down there. As we know, we've used him in more or less a forward role a couple of times before, and he's looked at home a little bit better than Moore for a few games this year, despite some fairly shitty form when he has gotten the full game. But it's really heartening to see him really putting his hand up.
Yeah, I think Moore's more consistent. I think you know what you're going to get with Andrew Moore, and that's you're sort of like 14 to 18 touches, maybe a goal. He'll lay a few tackles. He might waste the ball a little bit. With Youngie, he's either going to be one of the sort of best 5 or 6 on the ground, or he's going to be absolutely horrid. So I think that's probably something for Aaron Young to work on. And I think he's contracted for next year as well. So hopefully that's something for him to work on in the preseason and try and add some sort of consistency to his game, because his best is absolutely fantastic.
He's got that ability, especially in tight games, to step up and just win a clearance where he probably doesn't deserve to do so. He's got really good hands in the pack, Young. And I guess with Young versus Moore, although I don't like to equate them because I think they're different players, and there is room for both of them potentially moving forward. I think if you were a goal down with the centre bounce, you'd want Young in the middle. If you were a goal up, you'd want Moore, just because you're going to get that consistent level from Moore, whereas Young's more likely to pull something out and win you a game, I think. So, but look, I think there's room for both of them if they can step up and start to believe a little bit.
Yeah. Sammy Cahoon, he was the sub. He came on pretty early, obviously, when Ollie Wines was subbed out at quarter time, and there seems to be some mixed opinions on his game. I thought he was pretty wasteful and sort of burnt the ball a little bit. Other people thought he was really, really good. What were your guys' thoughts?
85% disposal efficiency. So I know that's a bit of a meaningless stat, given he's playing across half-back. So, look, I thought he came on and did it right. He gets himself involved, Cahoon. 20 touches in 3 quarters is really good. And he just seems to read the play pretty well. And I guess that shows why we rated him pretty highly before the draft, and why he was rated highly, and why we ended up being happy to get him. He does find the ball pretty well. I agree with his kicking. It's sometimes suspect, and maybe misses opportunity. 85% looks good, but maybe he missed opportunities that he could have taken and kicked to a contest which we lost or something like that. So, look, I think overall he's pretty good. He just needs to work on his delivery, I think. Yeah,
I feel a bit the same about Cahoon as I think most people seem to feel about Jasper Pittard. Like when Pittard gets the ball, something disastrous can happen, but I never panic because I know that even in the worst case scenario, it's at least going to be funny.
True.
With Sam, I guess I'm a bit the same. They're both fairly cerebral players. You can see them thinking a lot when they're out there. And so I kind of do have the panics on a bit when Sam gets the ball, but I put him I think he certainly looks to me more of an AFL player than Sam Gray, for instance, if we're going to talk about the midgets on our list. I'm still very much on the fence when it comes to Sam Cahoon.
I think if we look at AFL halfbacks who make errors that cost goals, I mean, even the best do it. We saw Hodge during the week. I'm not sure if everyone saw that, but getting a ball smothered, kicking out of defence with pretty much an open kick from a free kick or a mark. I'm not sure what it was. And then Deledio went back and kicked it over his head for a goal. So yes, it can happen, but it even happens to the best. So I think you persevere with that if you think, as you say, that was a really good call that they are cerebral and they think. That's the kind of thinking players. And hopefully those are the kind of players that can step up and do things that other players can't do moving forward. So I'm happy to persist with players like that in the hope that they come good, rather than persisting with players like, for example, Sam Gray, who I think probably this sort of game was their ceiling.
Well, where do we see Hoon's role going forward? Like, what sort of position do you think he might make his own if he does make it at AFL level?
A halfback wing type role, I guess.
Yeah.
He's not big enough.
A lot of people sort of expected, particularly early on, that he might take over Kane Corn's sort of tagging role, but I just don't think he has that sort of consistency or maybe toughness in him to play that sort of inside role that he would have to play.
No, I agree. I think he's definitely more of an outside run player. If he's going to be competing, I think he's going to be competing with the ball coming in as opposed to at stoppages and stuff like that. But he does. I mean, he's as Raman said, he's a pretty intelligent player, and maybe he could learn to be that kind of player. But I think at the size he is at the moment, I don't think he's capable of playing that inside role. He's not big enough.
Yeah.
It's the same reason Sam Gray, I guess, can look like a gun inside midfielder at SNFL level, but it's not worth putting him in there because he just gets brushed aside by even average-sized AFL midfielders. That, if those guys both put on 15 kilos, then maybe we'll talk, but they're probably just not big enough to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. I thought a half-back line was fantastic. Hartlett playing across the half-back flank, as we spoke about a bit earlier, was a really good move, and it was great to see him sort of attack the ball. And almost seemed like he didn't really have any sort of opponent for the day, so that sort of certainly helped his form a bit. I thought Brody was fantastic across half back as well, and O'Shea was back to his intercepting best.
Absolutely. I think Brody's been pretty good all year. I was annoyed when he was dropped, and I think he was really harsh to be dropped because I think he looks less impressive when they put a player on him. And I think what the pattern with Brody has been that he'll dominate and play at all Australian level halfback for a few weeks, and then teams will think, oh shit, we can't let him do that again because he's been dominating, and they'll put a player on him, maybe like we would put Monfries on someone, and that'll quieten him down a little bit. But then you see Pittard step up and that sort of thing. So having a few damaging halfbacks like that, and hopefully O'Shea can step up and be a more full-time part of that would be good. But Broadbent just showed what sort of player he can be, and I would never have dropped him when he got dropped. But I think he was really good, and moving forward, you'd like to see him play more of those games, but. I think teams will continue to cotton on and put players on him and try and shut him down because he is so damaging with that big long boot when he's on. Yep.
Let's let them do that and see whether we can get even more out of O'Shea than we have been.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Even the tall defenders did a fantastic job as well. I thought Tommy Cleary played a really good game on McCartan. Trengove just did his job and was super consistent, and it was great to see Jackie Homsch back to his best. He absolutely murdered Josh Bruce out there.
Yeah, Bruce has been one of the better tall forwards all year. I guess maybe gone a bit under the radar given how St Kilda have been playing, but he's been fantastic, and it was a really good scout for Homsch, I think. I think Trengove, especially early, set up the start of our game by taking a lot of really good contested marks. Or intercept marks across half back, which I think got us to a good lead before St Kilda were even able to get into the game because he just cut off every attack. So Trengo very early on set us up, I think, and that was where he was at his best. But overall, really good. Again, another position we won comfortably. So really good.
With a fair bit of help from the Hoff dropping back there, especially in the second half.
He played one of those games, didn't he, Westhoff, that we know he can play, and he doesn't do it as often as we'd like, but he's got that ability just to do the miraculous and just be everywhere at once, and the spoil for the dribble goal was amazing, and you just want to see more of that from him. I don't know how we.
Can you imagine what type of player Justin Westhoff would be if he was a good tap ruckman?
He'd be a
in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because he just mismatches everywhere. It doesn't matter where he's playing. If he's switched on and he wants to be, he can beat any opponent because he can beat him on the ground or beat him in the air. There's no one who has his skill set as well as he does, and he's an elite runner as well. So even if someone's playing well on him, he can run them all over the park and tire them out. So you just wish he'd be a bit more consistent and play that sort of game a bit more often because he was fantastic.
Yeah, I reckon you're probably kidding yourself if you think we're ever going to see consistency from him, though. You're going to have to take the batter.
Well, if he could just play that well in a grand final for us, that'll do.
Yeah.
He can be terrible and inconsistent up to then, but I just want to see one of those chess queen type performances in a big game. Hopefully a grand final one day.
We bossed them in the midfield. It was great to see Lobie and Ryder sort of do a good tandem job and help win the clearances by 10, and we dominated in contested possessions as well. And I had to sit down and compose myself once again. Lobie took a mark inside 50 and slotted a goal. It was a fantastic sight to see.
Look, I think Lobie's always been quite a good kick for goal. He just never takes marks, so we don't see it very often. Yeah, I think he's actually one of the better set shots in our team. He just does not mark the ball. But obviously the contested mark he took was a fantastic one and a tough mark for anyone. So maybe I guess he would probably know as well as anyone that he doesn't take enough marks. And I'm sure the coach just talks to him about it. So whether it's in his head or something like that, hopefully it's the kind of thing that he knows about and he's gone, yep, all right, I've taken one now. And he's taken a few in the last couple of weeks against some weaker opponents, but still he has. So hopefully that's something he can go forward with and go, yep, I'm someone who can take a contested mark and I'll actually bother to put my hands up and they'll stick. So because if he adds that to his game, he becomes an elite ruckman as far as I'm concerned. That's probably the biggest issue for him, I think. So
the thing that's always frustrated me about him too is like there are certain players who can never take an overhead mark. They just look like they never will, but he kind of seems to get like 75% of the way through taking a mark and then something bad happens. It's just it's a
That's
little
the
bit
frustrating thing.
Yeah.
That is
Okay,
so
that's a great
frustrating.
call.
Yeah.
different to the players who just flat out can't take an overhead mark. He's just most of the way there. He doesn't lack anything, obviously, in height or in strength or in courage. And these are the things that that overhead contested marks are made of. So it's just that.
Well, it's not even contested marks; it's his uncontested marks as well. He often sort of goes to take a mark and sort of fumbles it over the boundary. And he had one yesterday where he almost took a mark in the defensive goal square and dropped it, but thankfully we had a player at the back and who picked it up and sort of ran off with the ball just to mop it up. So that was good. But he's in wonderful form. I think he's taken his average marks this year from 1.2 to 1.3 a game. So he's in absolutely rooping form. Trying to mark the ball is great. The other midfielders, you go, mate.
Sorry, Lobby just seemed to be a bit more competitive yesterday as well. Maybe the getting to play against Sean McKernan and the confidence that came with absolutely beasting someone for the first time all year for him, probably. I mean, I guess he came back from an injury earlier in the year, and maybe he's just working his way in now because we're starting to see the Lobby that we saw last year. So, and that sort of competitive spirit, and maybe it'll all come together towards the end of the season. So I definitely hope so.
It seems strange when you're talking about a ruckman, but like the thing that tells me that Lobby is in good form and is taking the game really seriously is when he's kind of down on all fours at the bottom of the pack and using that body to bash other people out the way, which is it's a strange kind of thing to say about a ruckman, but it's always been the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that competitiveness.
The two big guns in the middle were fantastic. Travis Boak and Robbie Gray. I think they shared something like 20 clearances and almost 30 contested possessions between them. And Robbie Gray, it was maybe a little bit wasteful in the first half, but his second half was just about the best game of footy he's ever played.
He just ran the game. He had his own footy out there. It was absolutely ridiculous. And, teams can't really tag him because he just goes forward and becomes another Chad Wingard up there. So it's almost like they think if we tag Boak, we'll just deal with what Gray's going to do. But, how long that keeps happening, I'm not sure because, if he's getting 12 clearances and, 37 touches a game and just absolutely dominating, I think teams will be going into games not really knowing what they're going to do to stop him at this stage, and he's playing Gary Ablett football basically. He's been brilliant. I think if we were a little bit higher up the ladder, he'd be a lock for All Australian, but just because we're a bit lower, I think maybe he's not. But just he's as good as he was last year. I think he's been equally as good.
He's certainly around the mark. I think he'll either be just in or just out, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely in the squad. Obviously, Chad's our lock, but definitely in the squad. I think if you look at his numbers, it's pretty hard to leave him out. He's such a good inside mid and still averages a lot of goals as well. So, hopefully.
I can't add to that. I mean, it's just breathtaking. It's a privilege to be able to view the player that Robbie Gray has become over the last 2 years. Just enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking about Wingard, he kicked another 4 goals. Which team is it going to be which stops Chad Wingard next? Because I think he's kicked the most goals out of anyone in the competition over the last 10 weeks.
I think the stat was he hadn't kicked less than 3 goals for 8 weeks. I think 8 games in a row where he's kicked 3+ goals, which is, that's like old school, mid-90s key forward numbers, let alone a small forward in 2015. So, and the fact that he's still getting, how many touches is he end up with? Only 15 today, but he's still averaging over 20 touches and doing that sort of thing. It's just ridiculous. And he is genuinely one of the best players in the AFL at the moment. He's just so damaging. Doesn't matter whether we're getting pasted or whether we're dominating, he just contributes every week and he finds a way. And, if he does get a really good defender that shuts him down up forward, he'll go into the middle and get 30 touches and 5 clearances and dominate that way. So, he's just unstoppable, I think, at the moment.
Do you guys see him moving into being a prime midfielder within the next couple of years and staying away from the forward line more? Or do you think he'll always be that back and forth?
Depends who can take over his role up forward, really. I think that's the most important thing. If someone like, either Jakey Need or Carl Amon or Jesse Palmer can come in and be that sort of player that can kick 30, 35 goals a year, then we will be able to move Chad Wingard into the midfield full-time. And, he's such a fantastic and dominant midfielder as well. But maybe we'll see him sort of do what Robbie Gray did last year and play maybe a 50-50 role and, pick up his sort of 25 touches and still kick, 30, 35 goals a year.
Maybe that's right. I see him as an Ackermanis clone, basically, or I think probably the Ackermanis Brent Harvey type player, where he's always going to be a high half forward type, but he can go into the midfield if he needs to. He's always going to be dominant up forward. Probably that sort of role where he doesn't ever really need to commit to one, because he's so good at doing both at the same time. And we've got, our midfield doesn't always play the best, but we've got a lot of good players in there, especially with the likes of Polak to come back and that sort of thing. So, look, I'd expect that he stays as that kind of high half forward and keeps kicking 3 goals a game and getting 20 touches, and that's probably where he's most damaging. I think taking him away from either position would be a shame, because he's so good at doing both of them,
But how's he going to win his Brownlows if he's not a full-time midfielder?
Well, 15 years ago, but Ackermanis did do it. So, and that's the kind of player I've been hoping he's going to become for, and he's pretty well there, isn't he? He's just that kind of. He maybe doesn't quite have the electric pace, but just the consistency and the ability to regularly do the ridiculous. He's like the Steph Curry of the AFL. He's that sort of player.
Yeah. Good call. Was there anything else you guys want to touch on for the Power game?
I am going to say something that my mum said to me on the way out, is that she reckons Brad Ebert might have a bit of a Daniel Pearce eye problem, like vision problem, I guess.
I totally agree.
Because, I think the story goes, for those who haven't heard it, is that Pearce didn't get drafted. I think we took him in the rookie draft, and we took him on and realised very quickly that he couldn't see very well, and then turned him into the rising star the next year by fixing his eyes. And Ebert's gone from a player with great vision who, just had a good, and he's still got a nice kick on him, but he's doing a bit of the Ben Jacobs at the moment, where he's doing a nice long lovely kick straight to an opposition player, and he's still really competitive. He's still an elite overhead player for his size, and he still runs really hard, but he just seems to they're not scuffed turnovers or bad kick turnovers. It's almost like he meant to kick it there, but it just went to a place that wasn't ideal. So maybe we should be looking at getting his eyes tested. And this is something my mum said to me on the way out of the ground, and I couldn't agree more. I really think
there's something there, because you say he's an elite overhead player, and he often is, but he also has the odd game here and there where he just doesn't take an overhead mark at all, whether he's under pressure or not. Those games happen, and I've been wondering if it isn't a vision thing, because obviously he lacks nothing in strength, he lacks nothing in courage. That could be it. Seriously,
it's just the only thing I can think of that would explain why he goes from his best to his worst. Yeah. And I'm not sure if there's a different time of day where he's a better player, or he can't. I don't know, but he was all right. Against the Saints, but he still did a couple of those kicks just straight to a Saints player, or straight to where a Saints player could cut it off. So, I'm not sure. Hopefully it's something you can sort it out, because an on-song Brad Ebert makes us so dangerous, and just gives us another dimension in the way that he can run and create space, and run and create space and take marks, I guess, where other players wouldn't be able to do, and then create further space by doing that. So you'd hope we can sort him out, whatever the issue is.
I almost think he might be running too hard and sort of tiring himself out too quick, because he sort of follows the same path every game, where he has this fantastic first quarter, and then he just slowly it just sort of degrades, and then he starts turning it over, and I don't know if it's a fitness thing, or whether he just sort of burns his sort of petrol tickets too early in the game. I'm not too sure, but he also he's followed the same sort of path the last 2 seasons, where he's had this absolutely ripping first sort of 6 or 7 games, and everyone's sort of talking about him, possibly being in the All Australian squad, and then he just, again, very slowly goes downhill. And the last 2 years, he's had a really big end to the season and a pretty good final series, and he probably won't get that chance this year. But I don't know if it's maybe a fitness thing.
It could be. He definitely is one of the hardest workers in the team, and he hasn't seemed to have lost a lot with that, and he's still always trying to create space and putting distance on his opponent. So, look, it could be, because as you say, the eyesight thing doesn't explain why he's good in some games and not good in others, other than maybe luck. So there's clearly an underlying issue, though, and maybe that's it, and maybe we need to rein him in a little bit. Also, maybe he's he's done that by, with White not on the side. He's got to do a lot more of the running, and maybe that's tiring him out. So it's tough to know.
I guess the only other thing I want to mention is Jakey Need, who had possibly his best game at AFL level. Very, very possible, except for maybe the final last year against Richmond. But, it was certainly one of his best four-quarter efforts. And it was great to see him bounce back after last week, where he sort of got all his touches in one quarter and was pretty invisible for the other three.
Yeah, I think as a small forward, as long as they're not too invisible, you can accept that, because sometimes, obviously, you're going to be in the right place at the right time. But I definitely think I've noticed a change in his ability to crumb. And this is what I think probably why we took him and why we play him and what we hope he will become, is a real genuine Ballantyne-style crumbing forward. And I think he's kicked a few goals, and these last few goals have been that sort of goal. And, if he'd snapped over his shoulder instead of giving it to Ryder, he would have had another one as well. So, and look, maybe he's finding space in the forward 50 because St Kilda and Essendon aren't good enough to defend. But and maybe he'll struggle against teams that are able to get more numbers back, but he just seems to be finding more space, and when he does get the ball, creating himself some space. We talked about it last week again. I'm not sure if it came through before we got cut off, but that goal after Wingard's almost mark was where he weaved around one guy, shook a tackle, and then snapped home was a classic small forward crumbing goal, and the kind of goal you'd expect to see from someone like Ballantyne. So if he can start doing that more often, and in addition to what his already really good defensive, 4 to 50 defensive pressure, he becomes a really good player for us. So hopefully this is the sign of things to come going forward.
Yeah, that is really, it is really exciting that he's starting to develop that part of his game, because, that people always talk about crumbing being an instinctive thing, and there is an instinctive element to it, but it's also very much a matter of discipline and thinking your way through things and putting yourself in the right position. So it actually is the kind of thing that can be coached and taught. And it seems that they've put in some work in that part of his game, and it's really paying off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the Magpies for a little bit. They played Central Districts. It was good to see them bounce back with a win. They won 12-7 to 9-8. Mitch Harvey and Robbie Young kicked 3 goals each, whilst Louis Sharrod and Anthony Beamers kicked 2 as well. Mitch Harvey, another 3 goals. It's great to see him in the goal scorers once again.
Yeah, look, I'm campaigning for either him or Butcher to be picked every week. So 3 goals, the excuses to not pick him, apart from the fact that we've actually won a game, are getting thinner and thinner. He plays in the ruck, so I'm not really buying the idea that he doesn't have a tank. If he doesn't, rest him up forward. We managed to play all last year in a year that was really important with Ollie Wines playing 70% game time. So if we can do that, then we can do the same thing with Harvey and get some games into him, because I've said this a lot on the forum that the SNFL is not a key forwards league because of the way that they play AFL-style team defence, but the kicking is still very much SNFL quality. So getting through an AFL-style team defence with poor kicking means that it's just harder to make room and find room for key forwards. And if you look at the key forwards that are kicking lots of goals, when I say lots of goals, the key forwards that are kicking the most goals, they're not lots of goals. They're kicking 60 goals in the season, and that's a big season apparently. So definitely over the last few years, it's been difficult. So look, if he's in the form he's in, I think it'd almost be good to have, and the fact that we've finished the season, almost be good to have a 1 week injury or something like that to someone like a Westhoff or a Schultz, just so we can get Harvey in, because there's really no reason not to be playing him other than we've got everyone up there. And I guess, look, we had Ryder out and we chose to pick Paul Stewart, which was the biggest waste of time I can ever think of, apart from maybe giving Stewart the one last crack. Harvey really should have been in, and I love the form he's in, and I really want to see him in the AFL side.
Yeah, he's probably just unlucky at the moment now because of how good Ryder, Schultz and Westhoff have worked as a trio up forward in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, and Lobie coming back into form as well. As I was kind of advocating that Ryder would play more as a ruckman and we could bring another forward in, but Lobie's picked up his game. Ryder's shown how some glimpses of what sort of key forward he could be, and we've just found a lot more space and we've created a lot more space. So I hope we can get him a game, but I understand in the form we're in at the moment how we might not be able to.
It'll be really interesting to see what happens at the point where we. If and when we become mathematically incapable of making the 8, whether that changes the selection policy and all. I for one would be extremely disappointed not to see Mitch Harvey if that happened.
Yeah,
If we're still a chance, then I guess I can live with not seeing him. But yeah, come on.
It's great to see a ruckman dominate. I mean, they had more than double the hit-outs than what Central Districts did. Redden had a really good game, 30 hit-outs and a goal. Billy Frampton as well had 32 hit-outs as well. I guess maybe a disappointing thing was Tommy Jonas had just the 7 touches, and whilst he's a defender and obviously disposals isn't all that important, it would have been good to see him sort of get a bit more of the ball and have more than one kick.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was there, and it came as something of a surprise to me to realise afterward that Jonas actually played. So that's probably not a good sign.
Did he blanket an opponent? Because, I mean, I know Jonas, when he first started in the AFL side, was very much a one-dimensional shutdown player, and he slowly brought that kind of offensive side out, but making sure that his shutdown side was the most important thing. So maybe we're bringing him back to basics, and we're just saying, forget about getting the ball, just shut that guy out of the game. So how was he defensively?
Can't say I would have taken too much notice, I'm afraid.
Okay.
It was all that free.
Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's good that we didn't notice him because he just cut his player out of the game. But
in principle, you're dead on though.
Yeah.
Cole Amon was pretty good as well. He had 18 touches. It's good to see him get amongst the disposals again, and hopefully we can see a bit more of him at AFL level before the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I think he was unlucky to be dropped. He's got a lot of pace and gives us a little bit of X factor on the outside, and I'd like to see more of him. Definitely, it was a shame that he was dropped when he was.
Let's not forget a fairly decent showing by Butch down back.
Oh,
which was kind of interesting to see.
Get in there, Scorcho.
Look, I wanted to be picked as a forward, but if he's offering something down back, especially given that we play so many down back, and we've had Carlisle out, so Cleary's had to come up, and then we're looking at guys like Austin as lead defenders. I'd be happy to I'd like to see him picked and play and have a really good career, but at the very least, maybe we could look at rookieing him and using him in that role potentially. He definitely looks a lot more confident in the games I've seen, and we have been saying for quite a while that he's a confidence player. So maybe chucking him down back and just getting his hands on the ball might be the best thing for him. But just the way they've used him, I feel like they may have just ruled a line through him and thought, well, we'll give Harvey a go at forward and we'll just chuck him down back where we need someone, and he'll go at the end of the year. So I'd be interested to see.
Yeah. I instinctively right now, though, I think I'll say it. I think he'll actually be retained on the senior list next year, and I think that will be largely because he'll continue on in the current role and show that he can get back to the fundamentals of the game and not have to worry about actually kicking goals for a little while.
That's crazy talk, Raman, and you should feel bad. He's gone. He is as gone as anyone has been gone, I reckon.
In your list next year.
I am a card-carrying flag bearer of the Pro Butcher fan club, and I can't see him being on the list. I can see him on the rookie list.
I can see him on a rookie list.
That's the funny thing.
Just because you can never have enough good forwards or good talls, basically, and we look how thin we look down back. As soon as we lose one and we have to move someone up. So I would hope he'd be retained in that role, just because, I'm a big fan and I want him to do well. But I'd struggle to see him on the senior list. Maybe on the rookie list.
I'm not even as big a fan as you
What
are.
sort of reaction are we going to get if Sam Gray gets upgraded and Johnny Butcher ends up on the rookie list?
Look, you're a moderator, aren't you, Macca? I'm just going to say, please don't ban me. You'll have plenty of reason to do it, but just think about all the good things I post and try to ignore the vitriol that comes out of my keyboard if that happens. Look, I think everyone who's read the forums ever in any thread about totally unrelated stuff would know how I feel about the whole situation. I definitely make it clear. So I'd hope he'd be retained in some way because he's starting to look like he might belong down back a little bit. He's been named in the best a bunch of times, which was a lot of the criticism when he was kicking all those goals and leading the Ken Farmer medal last year was, he hasn't been named in the best. And, goals don't count if they're just cheapies over the top. They have to be certain kinds of goals for them to be worth 6 points, apparently. But the fact that he's getting named in the best means that the coaches are happy with what he's doing. So maybe, maybe they'll see, that he's coming to that age where tall players start to really come on. And maybe they think, we've just seen something we like, and maybe we'll rookie him or keep him on the senior list even. But
Mark it down,
we'll see how he finishes the season.
Senior list, you heard it here first.
I reckon if there was a bookie on it, they would have paid out already on Johnny Butcher getting delisted.
I tend to agree. But hey, look,
I can see him at a different club. I can see someone like Carlton or Brisbane.
That's actually literally the reason why I don't
maybe
think
someone else getting.
I don't think
him
we'll
a
rookie him because we'll be afraid that someone else will get him. So I think we'll retain him on a minimum contract on the senior list.
I think we've probably got enough players that we can delist now that, we've got to make the 3 changes. I know earlier in the year we're all very kind of brash and boorish and saying, we won't have enough players to delist because all of our players are guns. But I think there's definitely some players that are very obvious outs for me. So I think we've got room for him if we want him. It'll just depend on how deep the draft is and stuff like that. And I've heard that the draft isn't particularly deep, not that I know really anything about it. But, if we think we can get a player better than him with our last pick in the draft, then that's what we should be doing. But if not, then we should be hanging on to him, absolutely. Especially with the list profile where it is, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if we are thinking of giving him another year next year, which I don't think we are, but if we are, then the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks with him playing at fullback has been a complete waste of time. Because he's not going to get a game as a defender at AFL level.
Well, theoretically not, but, I mean... Okay, say for example we were with the same injuries we've got, and we were 11-5, so we're looking at 11-6, and looking at making the finals, and we've already lost Carlisle and had him out, and then say for example Homsch goes out down injured for the rest of the year, and we've got him and Carlisle out. We've got to bring up a defender. Who comes in
Jonas.
At this stage? Jonas?
Yep.
Based on what?
Based on he's the hitman. That's what.
But if we were picking players purely based on a cool nickname, then Rex Banner would never have been listed. So, look, I tend to agree. I think they would go with Jonas, but I think obviously Butcher's been playing better, and he's been named in the best, as I said. So they're clearly happy with how he's playing. So, look, hey, it could still happen, couldn't it? Where we lose get a couple of tall defensive injuries in the last few weeks, and maybe he'll get another game playing down back, and it'll be like bizarro world, and no one would really know what to say because everyone who's making any sort of argument, that was probably not the argument that was going to be made, that maybe one day he'd come in as a defender. So it'd be definitely a good fun time to be on the port board.
Absolutely. Well, I reckon we might call it quits there and shut off the podcast. Thanks, boys, for coming on.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us again. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Mac.
And until next time, Can't the pair.
Can't the pair.
Not
a long kick of the ball. Think about going short. He's got Lobe inside 50. Ignores that. Keeps it low. Wingard takes off. Hands it up the boat. The captain sees Westhoff. He's in the square. He doesn't need him. Getting a little hot in here.